Hey everybody, my presentation is about the structure of the heart. My catchy title for my board is Aorta Tell You About the Heart, or I ought to tell you about the heart. The heart is a structural organ located behind and to the left of the breastbone or sternum and between the lungs. It's shaped like an upside down pear and it's about the size of your fist. It is contained within the cycle of the pericardium and it sits on top of the diaphragmatic muscle and it's surrounded by the rib cage. And all of these structures serve to protect the heart. The heart is made up of 4 chambers, 2 small chambers called the atria and 2 larger chambers called ventricles. The left ventricle is the strongest and largest chamber in the heart. It is required to pump blood to the rest of the body, so it needs to have more muscle than the other chambers. The heart muscle itself is called the myocardium. Several large veins bring blood into the heart. The superior vena cava brings blue blood from the upper body tissues to the right atrium, while the inferior vena cava brings blue blood from the lower body tissues to the right atrium. 2 large arteries carry blood away from the heart. The pulmonary trunk carries blue blood out from the right ventricle towards the lungs. This artery quickly divided into the right and left pulmonary arteries, which carry the deoxygenated blood to the right and left lungs. The aorta is the large artery that exits the left ventricle, carrying red blood and body tissues. So I have created a model of the heart, and if you notice, I have created a model of the heart. Notice the veins and arteries that run across the surface of the heart. The heart is made out of living tissue, mostly cardiac muscle cells, and these cells need a steady supply of nutrients and also need to be supplied with blood as well. That's the purpose of these veins and arteries, which together form the coronary circulation. Now let's look at the internal anatomy of the heart. The right atrium opens to the right ventricle through the right atrioventricular canal. The right atrioventricular canal, or valve, is also called the tricuspid valve. This ensures one-way blood flow through the canal. The valve passively opens and closes based on the pressure differences that arise when the right ventricle contracts and relaxes. The papillary muscle connects to the valve via strong, thin connective tissues through threads called chordae tendineae. Papillary muscles connect the valve via strong, thin connective tissue called chordae tendineae, which are nicknamed heartstrings. The papillary muscles contract when the ventricles contract. This keeps the valve from opening into the atrium. That way, when the right ventricle contracts, the blood goes out of the pulmonary trunk and none of it can flow backwards into the right atrium. The left ventricle receives blood from the 4 pulmonary veins. It is separated from the left ventricle by the left atrioventricular valve, which is also called the bicuspid valve, or the mitral valve. When this valve opens in response to pressure changes, blood flows from the left atrium, down the left atrioventricular valve, and into the left ventricle. The left ventricle empties into the large aorta. Like the right atrioventricular valve, the left atrioventricular valve closes off left atrium when the ventricle closes. Like the right atrioventricular valve, the left atrioventricular valve closes off the left atrium when the ventricle closes. This ensures that none of the blood in the left ventricle flows back into the left atrium. The left and right ventricles are completely separated by thick interventricular septum, and the left and right atria are completely separated by the thinner interracial septum. The aorta and pulmonary trunk are separated from their ventricles by semilunar valves. These three pocket-like cusps meet in the center of the vessel to block blood flow. Blood flowing out of these ventricles pushes against the valve, causing it to open. However, these valves ensure one-way flow. If blood flows backwards from the vessels and tries to enter the ventricle, the valves snap shut. So, these one-way valves ensure that blood does not flow back into the heart once it has been pushed out. So, that is a look at the internal and external structures of the heart. Thank you. This is my board. Going in, we have the external anatomy of the heart and the internal anatomy of the heart. Right here, we have the anterior side of the heart, and everything is labeled. Then we have over here a picture of a real heart, as well as the continuation of the superior vena cava right there. Moving on to the internal anatomy, we have the same thing. We have labeled the internal anatomy of the heart and a picture of both sides of the interior of the heart. I have also created a model of the heart that I am showing you here, and I have created a separate video where I explain the features of this heart. So I have made a model of the heart out of clay, and I'm going to show you some of the structures on here. So here we have the aortic arch, and these are the vessels that lead to the neck and the arms. Here is the superior vena cava. Here's the right atrium, this kind of blue stuff right there. Then we have the coronary sulcus, which is this kind of line right there, which is the veins. And this white stuff is fat, actually. Then we have the right ventricle and the left ventricle. We have the ascending aorta, which is what this is called right there. And this is the pulmonary trunk right here. Down here we have the auricle of the left atrium. So that is my model heart. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Aloha!